Hello, everyone. This is Mo. I'll be starting the workshop in just a few minutes. I'm just waiting for a few more people to trickle in, and we'll get started shortly enough. If you all can hear me, would you do me a favor and just write, yes, I can hear you in the chat? That would be great. Thank you. So I'll give it 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. All right, in about a minute, we'll get started, everyone. Just want to make sure that everyone who wants to join is here already, and then we can get started promptly. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so it's currently 5:02. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Mo. I'm one of the tutors here at Kweller. A little bit about myself. I've been tutoring in the New York City area for the last, it's been about 14, 15 years now. And I've been tutoring, I myself am a graduate of Hunter College High School. I went there from 2007 to 2012. Those were very formative years for me. It's a great school. Of course, you all know that. That's why you guys are, you guys have been all preparing so hard for this exam for the last few months, especially the last few weeks since they've announced the fact that the test is going to be held tomorrow. I'm sure all of you are a little bit nervous. I would hope so. It's a good thing, not a bad thing to feel a little nervous. We'll talk about that as well. If you guys have any questions at all, I want you to please write it down in the chat, but at points when I ask for questions. Because if you write them now, what might happen is that I might miss them as I'm walking through the things that I have prepared for our little seminar here. So we'll end promptly around, let's say 5:50, 5:55, and then I'll give about 5 to 10 minutes for questions so that I can also take some questions at the end to help you all out to the best of my ability. Everything that I'm about to say should be prior knowledge. It's just a little bit of a refresher summary for all of you so that when tomorrow comes, it's all really fresh in your mind and you can apply it right then and there. So first thing I'm going to do is start off by sharing my screen. So if you can see my screen, I'd love you to say yes in the chat so I know that it's working perfectly. And you'll see pop up something that says the hunter essay, the personal narrative. Okay, great. As long as everyone can see that we're all on the same page now. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk to you all about is since the majority of our focus is going to be the hunter essay, it's that's what we're going to focus on heavily. I'll answer some questions about the multiple choice as well. As you all know, the process for hunter in terms of how acceptance works is once you're invited to take the test, which all of you have been, so that in itself is an achievement. So definitely congratulate yourselves on that. You have to take a 3-hour exam, which encompasses a reading comprehension section and a mathematics section. So roughly about an hour each for those 2 multiple choice sections, as well as an essay. And that brings together the 3 hours of timing. Now, in terms of how acceptance works, from everyone that takes the multiple choice exam, which is everyone who's taking the exam, they take a certain amount of top multiple choice scorers, and they are the ones that have their essays read. And after that point, once that multiple choice cutoff has been set, then they're gonna look at basically the people whose essays stand out within that group of select individuals whose essays they're reading. And then the essay is gonna be the make it or break it for acceptance, okay? Now, there's a few things that goes into what makes a successful hunter essay. And so I've kind of laid them out here, and I want you all to pay very close attention to this, okay? So one thing you need to know about hunter is it's free education from 7th grade to 12th grade. That's 6 years, right? I've seen a lot of students and a lot of families decide to actually forego private school, who otherwise would have been comfortable going to private schools, just to go into hunter because they believe that the education is at that level worth that, it's that valuable. So for that reason, one must ask themselves, why would hunter decide to invest 6 years into a student and not have an interview for that student? So the essay serves as sort of an interview, a way for them to learn about you as well. But the 3 things, I know I've labeled them as 1, 2, and 3, but they're really like 1A, 1B, 1C. So if you can right now, I'm just going to change to purple because that is hunter's color. 1A, 1B, and 1C, because they're all just as important. 1A is making sure you answer the prompt. It is the most fundamental skill. If I'm investing in a student, someone to come into this school for the next few years and teach them, I want someone who can follow simple directions. So if you're unable to answer the prompt given, you've missed the mark on that completely. If you write a phenomenal essay, but it doesn't answer the question that's being asked, you're not going to get into hunter, without a doubt. This is the most important aspect of the essay, right? One of the ways to make sure you answer the prompt, and it's not just a simple question, right? Oftentimes you all will see prompts which give little bullet points to kind of lead you towards a specific answer, right? So use those bullet points as guiding points for when you plan. And we'll talk about planning a little bit later as well. The second, or 1B, is to showcase your ability as a writer. Can you write in an organized fashion? Do your transitions make sense? Are you descriptive? Can you keep a reader engaged, right? Is there a structure to the way that you're writing? Right? Do you use show, don't tell? And we've all heard of show, don't tell. It's where you use figurative language to make the reader feel as if they're there experiencing those moments with you, rather than telling them this is what happened and this is what happened, okay? And the number 3 is, it's the part that we've talked about earlier, but this is kind of like a hidden thing underneath the essay. It's to write about you. So I don't mean go ahead and just start talking about yourself. Think about what the essay prompt is asking. And as we look through various essay prompts, I'll kind of show you how to kind of talk about yourself. So for example, if there was what is your most memorable family trip, right? Or who is your everyday superhero? Or describe your best friend. Even though those topics don't directly talk about you, because they're about things that matter to you, they're going to get a sense of what's important to this writer, this student, right? What do they find valuable? And so those are ways to kind of showcase yourself to them as well, besides just your writing. Keep that in mind, because when you pick a topic to write about, if it casts a negative light on yourself, it's probably not the best topic to go with. Does that make sense? If you're going to write about a time where you overcame something, but you talk about, or something changed your belief, but you acted very negatively in the first half of the essay, and then you changed for the better. If you acted too negatively, that might be off-putting to the essay writer, right? So we'll talk more about that and how to pick like the middle ground of how to talk about things in an essay. These are just general tips for writing a good personal narrative. That's what I think of the essay more so, right? The essay isn't an argument, right? When the essay question is write about your favorite, everyday superhero or your role model, you're not arguing that your role model is better than every single other role model in the world, right? So it's not an argumentative essay at all, right? Instead, it's something personal. So you want to begin with a catchy hook, whether that's painting a picture by being very descriptive of a scene that you're going to mention later, or it's going from general to specific, something that everyone can relate to something specific to how you would answer the prompt. Have a clear answer to the prompt and outline your essay. I can't stress this enough. I'm sure you all are familiar with like the ELA test, the statewide exams, where you've all learned that whenever there's a question, your response should reword or rephrase the question in your answer. This is similar to that, but not quite that extreme, to the sense that you will have to repeat the words of the prompt, but it's not a bad idea to make it crystal clear to the reader. Separate your events clearly into paragraphs. I always say, think about if you have like a little cousin or little brother or little sibling or a little sister. If they're trying to explain a story to you, sometimes it can be all over the place because they're just trying to get the words out. Don't let your essay be like that, because it's confusing and hard to follow. And remember, whatever you've written, if it's hard to follow, it's not like the readers of your essay can go back and ask you, hey, what did you mean by that? If it's unclear from the beginning, it's going to stay unclear throughout. And that's not going to be good. That's how you'll lose engagement as well. Beware of sentence structure. Write sentences that are clear, concise, and try for some sentence variety. So what I mean by that is, don't just have a bunch of long or short sentences. Have a good mix of both. One thing I noticed, whenever I've worked with students at the very beginning, is that all their sentences seem to sound or look the same. It's I did that, I did this, then this happened, right? So you want to make sure that you get out of that kind of monotone kind of rhythm and you change it up, right? That you have some sentences that are short, some sentences that are long and very descriptive, and other that are medium-sized. Oftentimes you can combine sentences that are really short to avoid repeating yourself as well. Beware of word choice. So what that means is, instead of just saying simple words like happy, you could say content, right? So it's a part of using higher level or better vocabulary, but also instead of just using very basic words or dead words, as we call them, use sophisticated words instead, right? But make sure you know what they mean and that you're using them correctly. Because if you're using a word that's sophisticated, but you're using it incorrectly, that's a red flag. They know that you just probably heard that word somewhere and you're using it wrong. The other thing I would say is, make sure you know how to spell the word you're trying to use. If you're trying to write down sophisticated, but it looks like the word sandwich, that's not going to work out, right? There's definitely going to be an issue of clarity there. So make sure that you're spelling the word correctly too. Have a clear conclusion where you restate the words from your prompt and your essay as a whole. That's where you summarize everything, but you rephrase it, right? You don't just use the same sentence over and over again. And bring back the hook to form a circle. So what I mean by that is, imagine tying a nice little bow on your essay at the end, where it gives a sense of conclusion. To properly understand what a sense of conclusion is, you all can think of like when you're watching a really good movie, even if you don't know how much time is left, you know that the movie is ending just based off what's happening. Everything is coming together, it's wrapping up, and you're seeing like themes from throughout the movie come together. Same exact thing with your writing, right? You want to make sure that you reintroduce the fact that your prompt has been answered. You've answered whatever the answer to your prompt is, whoever your everyday superhero is, it's very clear why they mean so much to you and why they're your role model, so on and so forth. Before I move on to the next page, are there any questions? So this is the best time to ask questions because I'm giving you all time and pauses now to ask them. I'm gonna try to scroll up a little bit just to see if there's anything here. Okay, if you have a question, please feel free to ask now. How can we work better on time for math? Can we get extra time? So for those of you who are asking about the other sections, I'll talk about them near the end. You do not get extra time to bubble your answers onto the Scantron. So make sure you're using that within that time frame. How can we work better on time for math? Do we get extra time for the bubble sheet? No, we don't. What happens if I don't finish my bubble sheet in time, but I finish everything else? Well, this is the thing. They're not, whatever is in your booklet, they don't really care about, that gets recycled. The parts that stay and get scanned and are actually part of your part of your score and your ID code are your essay. So your essay is what's going to get graded, as well as your Scantron. If anything, your Scantron is a bit more important than your essay. The reason being, first, they have to grade the multiple choice to even consider reading your essay, right? If they don't have a good enough score for you multiple choice wise, they don't know if they're going to read your essay or not. How can you make a good hook? We'll talk about that later on. How do you know if you've concluded your essay? We'll talk about that as well. Usually, you know you've concluded your essay because you've done all the things that are asked for in the prompt, and you've clearly stated out the reasons and described them within the entirety of the essay. Do you have any suggestions for hooks? Usually, I have two go-to methods for the hook. One is to either start with painting a scene, right? Painting an image of like what's happening somewhere, depending on what the story, what the prompt is. If it talks about, write about a memorable family vacation, I could talk about the moment that's very memorable. I could start with painting that scene, and I could like zoom out and kind of tell the reader, this was probably this moment I would probably never forget. And then that's how I would start my introduction, and then tell them why, and that would introduce the reasons why that I'm going to talk about later. Or the other thing is to go from general to specific, which is, vacations are a great way for people to unwind. One such vacation that I won't forget anytime soon is my family trip to blah, blah, blah. And so with that being said, that's another way, that's called like kind of like the general to specific introduction. And that's another way to do it. Does bring back the hook to form a circle mean to reference your hook in the conclusion? Well, it means that make sure that there are no loose ends, right? So you don't need to necessarily reference your hook, but make sure that it's clear that you've come full circle, that you answered every single part of the prompt. Do you prefer a 4-paragraph or 5-paragraphs in your essay? I prefer 4. And how many body paragraphs should you have? I think 2, and I'll tell you kind of why. What if you run out of space on the essay? Well, then you'll have an incomplete essay. Part of being a good essay writer is knowing that this is how much space I have to write the essay. And so I need to be able to get this message across in the space provided. Do they take off points for spelling mistakes? Well, I don't think so. Keep this in mind. Whenever you take any kind of test which requires an essay, the proper writing technique to become a good writer is you need to go through many drafts, right? Like for example, even in Hunter, when I was there, the way it works is you write a paper, you write a first draft, it gets checked, revised, peer edited, then you write a second draft. And then you peer edit and you revise that, then you get a third draft. And until you're content, you don't arrive at your final draft. Understand that this is not the same. Whenever you have a test essay, you're trying to write your best possible first draft. So if there's a spelling error here or there, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. But if it's consistent, then that's going to become an issue. And it's going to be, especially if it's hard to read as well. So can we use highlighters? I'm not entirely sure. You shouldn't need to highlight your essay regardless. So that shouldn't be an issue for this. How do we write a hook for these personal essays? Well, again, it depends, right, what type of essay it is. And I think as we move on, we'll talk more about it. What if you make a problem with your Scantron? I don't understand what you mean by you make a problem with your Scantron. So if you can clarify, that would be helpful. How do you make a good conclusion that wraps everything up? Well, we'll look at some examples as well. Wait, there's a bubble sheet. Yes, there is a bubble sheet. It's a Scantron. That's where you're going to have to mark down the multiple choice answers. Yes, there is a wait list, but we'll talk about that later. If I don't have a huge range of vocabulary, are there ways I can elaborate on the words that I know in order to not lose points? Of course, I'm sure that there are lists that Kweller has provided, right, that you all have gotten about synonyms that can be used in other places. That would be very helpful. What if I can't print out the admission ticket? Can I just show a picture? I don't think so. I think you need to print out your admission ticket. If some people who received an invitation for admission, they don't go to Hunter, the next people on the wait list get an invite. Yes, that's true, except no one knows, except for Hunter itself, the order of the wait list. If we were able to eat during this test, when will it be? You are not able to eat during the test. I would say that you can ask, and I'll go over all of these things near the end. So I'm gonna get moving. I see that there's a lot of questions here as well. So we'll talk later. Let me go on to the next part. So this is the idea of show, don't tell, okay? So between show, don't tell, this is a very common and probably one of your strongest techniques. That's why I included this. So the whole reason show, don't tell exists is to make sure that your essay is more lively, right? That's the important of the usage of show, don't tell. Okay. So this is the first rule of writing, right? Show, don't tell. And here are some examples. So I'm going to give you this example. And this is something that I've worked with students before in my class, where if you have a telling sentence, I would give them telling sentences and make them vague, and then let students figure out the showing sentence. So the showing sentence is something you would write based off the telling sentence. You would create this whole context to be specific. Of course, this isn't something that you all would write. This is something from a college workshop that they've used, and I've just been borrowing the exact same kind of criteria. So if the telling sentence was Jack was afraid, then the showing sentence could be something like, as the footsteps tapped closer and closer, Jack felt his stomach muscles tighten. He flattened himself to the wall, the gritty bricks against his cheek, sweat chilled his palms. He used both hands to steady the gun. So of course, this isn't a topic that you all would write about, but what I'm trying to showcase here is using the showing sentence. What it does for you is it expands your writing. So for a lot of you who complain about either not having enough to write about, this is one way just in itself to expand your writing. The second thing is you should know when to show versus when to tell. So we've done exercises like this in my class before, where I'll give these different examples and students will work on, making them more dramatic, using more figurative language, using similes and metaphors, right? But remember, you don't want to do show, don't tell throughout your entire essay. You have to pick your points to do so. If you show, don't tell everywhere, you're telling the reader that, hey, look, all of this is important. But if everything is important, if everything is elevated, then nothing's elevated, right? Your essay should be points of, ups and downs, so of different importance levels. The reason why is because otherwise it's not clear to the person reading it that, oh, this is the most important part of the essay, right? And in terms of what you're doing, right? In terms of what you're doing for importance in those moments, that's where the prompt should be answered. Does that make sense? Okay, let's go on to the next page now. Okay, so this is the structure of a personal narrative. This is how I've kind of broken it down. So I start off with either a hook, right, about a story that catches the reader's attention, right, a relevant question, fact or definition, setting the scene. And oftentimes, you all have probably heard of the thesis statement. I'm not a big fan of that because the thesis statement is not the same as that of what's a general thesis statement, okay? Because it's not an argument, right? Let me go through what I mean by that. The argument, okay, in the chat, can we have people stop the messaging? Because I think you guys are arguing for a second. So there are more than 5,000, there are at least 5,000 students this time taking the test. In years past, it's been 3,000, but because they've expanded the range, because I feel like that's what you all are arguing over, because they've expanded the range of how many people can qualify to take the test, it's 5,000 students this year alone. Will that always be the case moving forward? Not sure. But I think instead of getting caught up by that, all of you who were talking about that instead should probably pay attention to what I'm trying to tell you, because we're nearing halfway through this session, and I want to take quality questions and give you guys quality advice before the test tomorrow. Thank you. So for the thesis statement, I'm not a big fan of calling it that specifically, because it's not an argument at the end of the day. Does that make sense? Because they're going to ask you, what is your opinion on this? Or how do you feel about this? So this is your personal take on something. You're not arguing against all other takes. It doesn't make sense to do that. So I think it's more so about events of a story or an experience and lessons you've learned. I think that's a better way of thinking about the quote unquote thesis statement. Your body paragraphs should do one of these four things, right? They should obviously have show, don't tell. They should have supporting evidence for whatever your answer was. They should showcase the passage of time. So make sure that it's clear how you're transitioning throughout your story. And then these transitions, they should be held to showcase how not just paragraph to paragraph your ideas are moving forward, but also specifically within, not just within the paragraphs, how your ideas are moving forward, but within the sentences, from sentence to sentence, are your transitions making sense? Does everyone understand? In the conclusion, the key thing here is answering the so what. I think that's the best way of thinking about how you know you've wrapped up the essay as a whole. The so what is really talking about the significance. So if I'm Mary, who's writing this essay, then the question comes down to, why did I choose this topic? Why is this topic so important to Mary? And why would it be impossible to understand who Mary is as a person without understanding why this topic is important to her? Or what does this question lead to in terms of helping us understand more things about Mary herself? Does everyone understand? Okay. I'm going to send these notes over to Ms. Kweller and Ben, and I'm sure that they will be much better suited to be able to distribute them as needed. Okay. So don't you already explain the significance of the topic in the body paragraphs? Yes, you do. You tell us why this topic is important in the body paragraphs, but here you go a step beyond that, right? Not just answering the prompt, because that's what you're doing in the body paragraphs. In the body paragraphs, you're telling us why the answer to this prompt, or why the answer you picked answers the prompt given. But in the conclusion, you go one step beyond that and you explain why specifically this answer is important for us, the reader, to get to know you, the writer. Now, I'll go ahead and answer why I believe that a 4-paragraph essay is more effective than a 5-paragraph essay. For those of you who are all asking, do you know the topic of the prompt? No, I don't, and none of you will either until tomorrow when the test happens. The prompt changes year to year. It could be 2 possible prompts, and you're given a choice between one of 2, and you get to choose, okay? So let me go back to why I think a 4-paragraph essay is better than a 5-paragraph one. Think about how much time you have on the test, right? If you have about an hour, because that's usually what most people have to write the essay, and think about how much space is given, right? If you don't have enough space to properly talk about, easily your body paragraph should be the largest. Your introduction can be about 3 to 5 sentences, and your conclusion can be around 3 to 5 sentences. But to properly develop each of your body paragraphs, they have to be a minimum of 5 to 7 sentences. Sometimes they're longer. Does everyone understand that? If you're not using about 5 to 7 sentences, and you're giving me 3 reasons in the body paragraphs, quality over quantity. Rather than giving me 3 okay reasons, it's much more important to have 2 very well thought out ones. That's why personally, I believe that 4 paragraphs is better than 5, not just for the sake of space, but because of your ability to properly talk about them and expand on them when you're writing the essay out. Okay. All right, before I move on to the next page, does anyone have any other questions? Okay. I heard last year was only 3 paragraphs. I don't recall anyone telling me that it was 3 paragraphs. So what if you run out of space for the prompt? Well, if you run out of space for the prompt, then what happens is that you won't have enough, they'll cut you off, right? So if you don't have enough space to write the entire essay, your essay gets copied. If it's going to be read, right? Because that's important, right? We have to talk about that first of all. If it's going to be read, what they're going to do is they're going to copy your essay and scan it over and over again to have multiple readers. When they're going to have multiple readers read it, if the entire essay doesn't come up on the scan, there's going to be a lot of confusion in reading your essay. So that's going to become an issue. Can you give some example? Can you repeat the paragraph sections again, what you explained in purple? Yeah. So this is my argument for writing a 4-paragraph essay over a 5-paragraph one. Your introduction and your conclusion should be around 3 to 5 sentences usually. And then each of your body paragraphs, in order to properly explain and expand on them, need to be about 5 to 7 sentences, right? And so what I'm saying is based off how much space you're given, right? And if you just look at any of the sample tests online, right, and how much space was given to write the essay, if you look at a sample test on the Hunter website, the space given to write the essay was a page, 1 full page and a half. That's how much lined paper there was. If you try to write a 5-paragraph essay, it won't fit adequately in that space. What will end up happening is each of your body paragraphs will be weaker because you won't be able to write a good enough amount to expand on the topics there. Does that make sense? Can we write after lines are drawn? I would not. They probably cut it off there for a reason. Yes, most body paragraphs, I would agree with you, are about 7 to 10 sentences. But I'm saying at the very least, if you were to write 5 to 7, that would be squeezing in as much as you could to write 3 paragraphs. And that's why those paragraphs would not be as long. Should we include a counterclaim? No, because you're not really arguing for anything, unless it specifically tells you to do so. Okay. When I took the Hunter test, the essay prompt for me was write about your everyday superhero. So I was going to get to what the previous prompts are, but we need to kind of like move ahead in order to get there. Okay. So this is exactly how my plan looks like. So when I'm planning an essay, I'm thinking about what the prompt is. I'm making this very clear to myself, right? And then I'm thinking about how this topic relates to me, right? And how am I going to answer it? And I think about how am I going to introduce it? How will I hook the reader? And then what's moment 1? So for me, I call each body paragraph moments specifically when I'm teaching it, because you should always plan your essays. So personally, I think if you spend 15 minutes planning, that's perfectly fine. The reason being is if you know what you're going to write, if you have your plan thoroughly laid out, then what's going to happen is that you won't have to stop and pause and think in the middle of writing. The number one issue I've seen from students whenever they write essays is they mess up the flow of their essay. Does that make sense? So what ends up happening is students will only plan some of their essay, and then they'll just get straight to writing. And they'll have one really good reason thought out, but then the second reason isn't as well thought out, right? So what happens is they'll write a very good first half of the essay, and then the second part of the essay, the second body paragraph on, they'll struggle with. Does everyone understand that? That's why writing these examples is very important. Okay. So what's going to happen is, just because the chat's been a little distracting, I'm going to turn off the chat for a bit, and then when I'm ready to take questions is when I'll turn it back on. Okay. So for the first part, right, what I'm saying is you want to make sure that you take your time planning your essay. The number one thing is, in the past, I've broken it down to this. You want to take about 5 to 10 minutes to plan, 30 to 40 minutes to write, and about 5 to 10 minutes to edit / proofread. Okay. Now you can, of course, not follow this order, right? Or you can, add a few minutes here and there. If you take 15 minutes to plan, you'll have less time to write, but that's okay, because since you've planned it out more thoroughly, what's going to happen is you'll have more time to write. Another exercise I've done with students in the past is sometimes the first idea that pops into your head and you start planning might not be the best thing to write your essay about. So if you change your mind halfway through the plan, that's not time wasted, because you've come across a better idea, and essentially you'll write a better essay. So taking your time planning it out thoroughly making sure that you have two good body paragraphs or two good moments to choose from is very important. In terms of editing and proofreading, I have this little trick that I've told students to do in years past that a lot of them have come back to me and said that this has worked out great for them. And a lot of parents don't like this, but I've seen it work wonders. Before the exam, I always tell students, before the exam starts, raise your hand and ask the proctor if you can use the restroom. That way you at least know where the restroom is. I did this on my own exam, by the way. After you write an essay, in the real world, right after you're handing in any bit of writing, and you try to proofread it right then and there, you have a hard time catching your mistakes. It's because your brain tricks itself into saying, wait, I worked really hard on this. I don't want to see the mistakes in it right now, right? So that's why people will write something and then they'll take a little break and then they'll come back and proofread it. By taking a little break from it, what they do is they allow their brain to just kind of like think about other things and not focus on this essay that they just worked really hard on for the last few hours. So on the test, that's really hard to recreate because it's a timed test. So what I did is I went to the bathroom. I raised my hand after I finished writing my essay, and I went to the restroom, even though I didn't need to. I got escorted there by one of the helpers, and I washed my face, and I came back into the room, and then I flipped over my essay paper, and I read it back to myself. That 30-second to 1 minute that I took to go to the restroom to just kind of take a breather before coming back and editing my essay did a great job for me because it gave my mind a little bit of rest from the essay, and I was able to catch mistakes that maybe otherwise I may not have caught, and I was properly able to edit them. Some were spelling mistakes, some were grammar mistakes. That would make my essay better than someone who wasn't able to catch their spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. So that was the benefit of that. When you're editing, you can't really put carrot tops and add whole sentences. That's why the planning portion is so important, because you want to make sure that everything that you've planned, you've added beforehand, because adding it back to the essay is very hard. Does everyone understand that? Okay, I'm going to open the chat up again just for questions. If you have any questions, you may ask now. Can we see an example of a conclusion? I don't think I have an essay ready here. I'll see if I can grab one just for us here. Is it okay to proofread your essay in the middle of writing it? No, that's a bad idea. Can you explain the structure of an essay? Well, we just went through that, Stephen, in the previous one. Do you have any tips on time management on the multiple choice? We can go over that afterwards. Can we go over the 2015 essay topic? We can look at it. Do you recommend writing the essay first? I do not recommend writing the essay first. Let me explain why. Can you just not plan at all? Of course, you don't need to plan, can it? But the issue is, if you don't plan, right? If you don't plan, chances are your essay will not be as well done. So let me explain why I don't recommend doing the essay first. If you do the essay first, then you might not have enough time to do the multiple choice. And remember, if you're maybe you've written a great essay, that's why you spend so much time on it. But because you didn't do the multiple choice, no one will ever read that essay. Okay. What's my recommended order? I'll actually talk about that at the very end. Okay. Can we do proofread after doing the ELA or math? Yeah, of course we can. Can we go over the 2015 essay topic? So we'll go over the essay topic later. What do you have to get in multiple choice? So a lot of that changes year to year because it depends on the pool of students. The other thing to consider is because there's more than 5,000 students taking the exam. Okay, I'm going to mute the chat one more time because I see a lot more questions coming. Okay, so in years past, I think the cutoff has been around somewhere between a 70 to an 80. 75, I think, has always been a good kind of like line to be within. The other thing to consider is in years past, there were 3,000 students roughly taking the test, and they would only have the top 500 multiple choice scores have their essay read. I don't know if that means that they'll stick with that 500 policy, even though there's more students taking the test, or if that means that they will have more essays to read, because they're definitely not going to open more seats. It's still the same number of seats that Hunter has available. When will you get your grades back, whether you passed or not? I believe they said at near the end of June or early July is when you should get your scores back. By the way, you won't get an actual score back. You'll either just be told you've gained acceptance or you have not. Can I do a question I had trouble with instead of going to the bathroom? Yes, of course. Just anything to get your mind off of the essay for a second. If we have 10 minutes after the exam, what section should we go over? Any sections that caused you the most amount of trouble. How about an average? I assume you're talking about the cutoff, so we talked about that. So the cutoff is usually around a 75. I think that's a good place to be at. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on. What to write about. Okay. So I don't know if you all can see my screen specifically, but I have like these lines made. And let me tell you what I've done in the past. So one of the exercises I've done with my classes in the past is having categories or essay topics to keep in mind so that they work for kind of every kind of essay, right? I'm sure if you all have been around long enough or have seen one of my past webinars on the grandpa's pen or grandfather's pen essay. So the way it works is you have a list of topics, either people, places, objects, and experiences or lessons to draw from. So what I think of is this is a toolbox, right? In this toolbox are a few memories or a few people or a few topics that you can almost fit into any kind of essay, right? So for me, one of those topics was my grandfather and his pen. And so the way it worked is using that topic, I was able to fit it into multiple essays. So for example, one of the essay topics was write about an everyday object that means more to you than its intended use. So I wrote about this pen that I got from my grandfather who passed away, and he used to be a journalist, and me wanting to use his fountain pen made me fall in love with writing, right? Just because I wanted to write so much. So that was one thing about why his pen means so much to me. But using that same topic, I can write about who do you admire and why. I can write about my grandfather who's passed away, but he's giving me this pen as an heirloom. And I admire him so much because he used to be a journalist. And he wrote about, when our country was going through its revolution, he was one of the journalists on the field writing about it. And so that's who's my role model. Another essay it would work for is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, my grandfather left me this pen. He used to be a journalist. I would like to follow in his footsteps, so on and so forth. So you see how this one topic works for multiple essays? So I'm not saying that you should have a list of topics or 10 topics that you can fit into every essay, because remember, the number one thing when you're writing the essay is making sure you answer the prompt. So if you're able to answer the prompt with one of the essays that you've written before, or one of these topics that you have placed, that you've worked with before that are in your toolbox, that would be very good. A few things I would highly recommend is for places. I would always pick a place in New York City, because if it's a New York City centric essay, then you have that with you. For experiences and lessons, I would talk about extracurriculars, whether you do sports or chess or whatever else, because they're a great experience to learn from, right? A moment where you had to overcome failure, maybe when you were trying to get better at tennis, something like that. So there's a lot to draw from there. Maybe your first time experiencing something, whether it was zip lining and how afraid you were and how you, or your first time riding a roller coaster. So those kind of experiences are really good to have in your toolbox as well. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about with this topic specifically? I'm going to go ahead and reopen the chat again for questions. So if you have a question, you're able to type now. Any questions on these topics specifically? So what time are we taking the test? I believe it says so on your ticket, and I believe it's 8 a.m. or they tell you to get there either around 7:45. Okay. What if you feel as if the topic is too personal? Well, if it's too personal, then that might mean that you're not comfortable writing about it. So that's probably not a good sign. And that means that your essay will be very vague. So I would probably not write about something like that. What if you're not able to relate to the topic yourself? So the thing is that they try to make the topic inclusive to most students, if not all students. So they know, that you all are sixth graders taking the test. So they won't ask you about some kind of experience that no one could have possibly had in sixth grade. I think the key to make sure that you are able to relate to it is by looking at old topics and going through. And one of the exercises I would recommend students do is go through previous topics that they've had from homework, previous Hunter essay topics in the past, and go through them as well, just to make sure that they know what's going on there. How do you make your essay stand out? Well, remember, your essay is going to stand out, or it should rather, because it's your unique experience. But the way to stand out even more is to now make sure that your writing comes across better. There's clear show, don't tell. You're picking your moments carefully, that there's transitions that make sense, that your reader is engaged. Does the story that I made count as an object? Does a story you made is not an object? What are the best experiences again? I didn't hear. Oh, so the best experiences are experiences where you learn something new. So I see that there's like over 20 new messages. So I'm just going to turn off the chat for now again so I can get through all of them. What are the best experiences again? So the best experiences are experiences where you've learned something, you've possibly failed, somewhere where a story is involved. Maybe it's your first time doing something, because you can talk about the fear and overcoming the fear. What was the prompt for the year you took the test? When I took the test, the prompt was write about your everyday superhero. I wrote about my father, and I'll tell you all a little bit about it near the end as well. Let me see. Does the story that I made count as an object? No, it does not. How the right to what to write about? Can you have a response modified for? When checking your work, could you end the essay and then check everything, or check each section after you finish it? I would say the most important part is to make sure you go through every section at least once, and then you can go back and check. Do you still have a chance to make it? So is there a reason why you want to answer what last year's prompt was? So I don't recall off the top of my head what last year's prompt was, but there were 2 prompts before. And I remember, one thing I remember is that one of the prompts last year that a student told me about was based off of a writing passage that they had read, a reading passage they had read, or it referenced back to it, and then they had to write the prompt based off that. Is there a high possibility the prompt is about a favorite thing, like a meal or fruit? There's a high probability that whatever the prompt is going to be something that's important to you or relates to you, whether it's writing about your neighborhood, or writing about your favorite meal, or writing about your favorite tradition, or anything like that. Also, on the day of the test, what should we do if we get frozen and really can't find anything? You got to try your best. That's really hard. I would say that if that's the case, keep on thinking of topics until you reach one. For the what to write about, can you have a response and modifier for the 4 sections? Running for experiences, places. So so you can have one response and modify it for multiple portions. So if you think about it, my grandfather's pen is one giant topic, and I was able to fit it into multiple different sections. And that's kind of how that works, right? I wasn't just picking and choosing portions of it. And I think that's key to this as well. Okay. All right. When will we get the email, if we get in or not? That should come around end of June, early July. All right. What are the graders looking for in an essay? Well, it's everything that we've been talking about so far, right? They're trying to see what portion of the, they're trying to see if you're able to answer the prompt, right? If you're paying attention, and like if you're able to follow directions. And then the second one is they're trying to make sure that you're utilizing strategies and criteria that make up a good writer. And then the last thing is they're trying to see if you wrote about yourself in some way or form. What will make my essay stand out? Well, it'll stand out if it's well written, right? That's the key thing here. Okay, let's go on to the next section. So here, I give an example of experiences to kind of write down and think about. Sometimes I work with students and we'll write something like chess, and we'll talk about how is chess, which is a big part of this student's life, going to relate to the multiple portions of the essay or the topics. So one could be about a mentor, right? His chess coach, and how this person's been a role model. Another thing could be about a place, which is like the Marshall Chess Club, and how that place is very meaningful to them in New York City, and they look forward to going there every single week, right? So this is what I'm talking about how taking one topic can lead to multiple ideas, right? So these are what I've known or called as recyclable moments, because you can use them for different essay topics. Remember, your goal is not to write one essay and memorize it and then just regurgitate it the day of the test. You're supposed to fit it into the prompt as required. Okay. All right, let's move on. So these are from a packet from a while back. I think this is actually part of some of your homework packets as well. So these are essay topics. So one thing that I would do personally is I would go through each one and be like, okay, what would I write about here? So who is your favorite character from a book and why? Okay, I would probably write about Hermione from Harry Potter. And my two big reasons, which are going to become my body paragraphs, are that she is very hardworking, right? Because she's not naturally gifted magically. So she's, a muggle and she has to come into this new world and she does so by through hard work alone. And she is extremely loyal and a great friend to Harry and Ron. And so those would be my two traits, and that's what I would go off of. What's the best thing you have ever written? So what's the best thing you've ever written? So I would think about like an essay I did for school and how I'm very proud of it, and how my teacher had called, singled me out in class because she was very proud of the essay I wrote and what it was about. And probably I would have picked, you would need to go into specifics, but maybe it was like a writing contest for a problem that's very important in our world today that affects kids. And I wrote about the environment and global warming. Describe your best friend. So I would talk about the two biggest qualities of my best friend that I really enjoy. The one that he challenges me, but he always supports me at the same time, right? The best thing you've ever written, how do you relate it back to yourself? That's the question that I just got. Well, remember, you wrote it. So that means that whatever it was must have meant a lot to you because you wrote about that topic. So that's how you would relate it back to yourself. Who do you admire, respect, and why? I write about my dad, talk about the sacrifices he does to make sure that me and my brother have everything that we need, and as well as how he's always there for us, not just with the sacrifices and being hardworking. And so, like, as you see, I'm going through each one and I'm doing like a little mini plan. So on my test, I did 2 body paragraphs, and it worked because obviously I went to Hunter for 6 years. What about describing an invention you want to make? Well, I would probably say something along the lines of, again, if you're talking about describing an invention you want to make, right, then you would go back to kind of, if you're talking about an invention that you want to make, you would talk about what's important to you, because that's how you would relate it back to yourself, right? So for example, I'm thinking about, like, for me, like something that's always very important is, are we going to have clean drinking water everywhere in the world? Well, one thing is we could take seawater, right, salt water, but find a nice way of separating the two. And so that's something that I would talk about. Does that make sense? So that's a way to kind of get through it as well. So again, this is what I would do, right? I think this is a very, very good way to go through the topics and make sure that I do have something to write about. Think about it right now. If you're struggling to think about a topic, it's better to think about it tonight, and along with your family who can give you tips on what to write about, rather than tomorrow in the middle of the test struggling through it, right? The other thing is, are you allowed to lie on your essay? Yes, to a certain extent, right? So I have to give you guys this as a preface, right? We're not the best writers in the world. The best writers in the world are those who write fiction, right? Because they create realistic worlds that people can then, feel fully immersed in. So none of us are at that level. So if you lie and you don't do a good job of doing it, it's going to be very obvious in your essay, right? Because you're not going to be able to be specific enough, you're not going to be able to be descriptive enough, so on and so forth. So those are going to become the problems that show up. So if you're going to lie about something you do know. So if something didn't happen to you, but it happened to your friend, do that, right? Describe it as if it happened to you. So what do I mean? If you're someone who goes to tennis and you didn't have a hard time in tennis camp, make something up or something that you saw that another student struggled with and adopt it as your own thing. Does that make sense? So that's a way to kind of circumvent that issue. So go through all of these, make sure you have them down. These are from years past. Make sure that you're comfortable with these essay topics, right? So as we can see in 2016, there were multiple essay topics that you could choose from. So again, going back to what we talked about before, think it through, plan it, because you might have a good idea in your mind for question A, but it's only partially planned out. So then you're not going to be able to write a good full essay on this. Okay. These are all parts of the syllabi from years past, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're part of your syllabi now or part of your syllabi from a previous program at Kweller. So in terms of answering your questions and wrapping things up in the last few minutes before I take every final question, this is my piece of advice for tomorrow. Tonight, what I want you all to do is make sure you pack your bag tonight. You should have your pencil case and your pencils in there, right, with an eraser. You should make sure that you have a filled water bottle and a Cliff Bar. Now, people have asked me, are you allowed to eat on the test? The answer is no, but, and this is my experience from tests in the past in general, it's that you can always ask the proctor before the test begins, hi, ma'am, or mister, I have a Cliff Bar and a water bottle. May I take it out? Okay. And keep it out on my table and snack on it. And if they say no, you just put it right back in your bag. And that's the end of that. Okay. The other thing is make sure that you bring a sweater. Regardless of the weather, you don't know whether the building is going to be very cold or it's going to be very warm. So you always want to have layers. If it's too warm in the building, you want to be able to take off the sweater. If it's going to get cold, you want to be able to put it on. Layers are very important. You want to be comfortable as you test, especially since you're going to be testing for 3 hours long. Does everyone understand that? The last thing is make sure that you print out your ticket tonight and that you look up how much time it's going to take you to get there tomorrow at that time, and give yourself at least a 15 to 30 minute kind of window to get there before time. The reason why is because there's going to be more traffic than usual getting to those locations of the test, because everyone's going to be headed there. Does everyone understand that? So you want to make sure that you're not frantically, trying to go there last minute. That would be terrible. Whatever time it tells you to in your ticket, make sure that you try to get there at least a good 15 to 30 minutes before, comfortably. Does everyone understand that? I know that a lot of you are nervous, and this is what I wanted to end with. This lesson about nervousness and how it applies to test taking. There's a theory in psychology. I always forget the name of it. But the way it works is this is your anxiety level or your anxiousness, your nervousness, right? And this is your performance. It looks like a bell curve. And so let's read it. Let's see what this means. It means that if you're not nervous at all, right? If you're not nervous at all, you don't care. So you're not going to do well on the test. If you're too nervous, you're going to freeze up. And that means that you're not going to do well on the test either. You want to be just nervous enough so that it keeps you on your toes and you're hyper aware of everything that you're doing. If I'm nervous enough, I'll know that, oh, I tend to make these types of silly mistakes. So I need to be aware of them, and that way I can avoid them, right? And so it's okay to be a little nervous. And so this exact concept brings me to what order should you take the test? For me personally, I always recommend doing the multiple choice first. Why? If you don't finish the multiple choice, it doesn't matter how great of an essay you write, they will never read it. You have to pass the multiple choice first in order for them to even get to your essay. So for me, I'll start with the multiple choice. And remember, whenever anyone takes any kind of test, no matter how prepared they feel, they're usually more nervous than they should be. So what I'm going to do is, if I'm nervous, I'm going to try to take a section between reading and math that I feel more comfortable with, so that my nervousness goes down to a level where I want it to be. So what this means is I'm going to start off with my math section because I feel most comfortable there. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my reading. But if I'm feeling very confident on how my sections are going, as I'm doing my reading, I might read my essay topic just so I can start my brain in the back of my head, start thinking about it a little bit of like, oh, what are possibilities for my essay topic to write about? And whenever I think of something, I'll just go back to my planning page and write it down, and I'll go back and continue doing my reading. Does everyone understand? So for me, the way I would do the test is I would do math first, then reading, and then the essay. For you, it might be different, and that's okay. The other thing I would say is if you've been doing the test in one specific order throughout time, and it's always worked for you, don't mess that up. Stay with what's worked already. Okay? Do we have any other final questions? Do you recommend doing the multiple choice first, but reading the essay prompt before starting? Yeah, it's not a bad idea. The other thing is, remember that each math question is worth more than each reading question. So make sure that you give yourself enough time for math. You should always show your work and you should annotate. Even though they're not going to look at it, they're going to only look at your answer to the multiple choice. The other thing to remember is you want to only look at that you should fill out every single answer. So this is from Hunter itself, right? These were the overview of the HCHS entrance exam and directions. And so here they give you a rundown, and I'm sure all of you have gotten this sort of email. They tell you when dismissal is, and so forth and so on. And so here, what I meant by the writing assignments, whenever they have bullet points, make sure that you answer those. And here it tells you that clearly they're only going to take those pages for your essay. So you can't add on any extra pages. I annotated when I did the reading, if that's your question. What time should you not exceed for any given section? Well, if you take a little bit more time in math, that means that you have less time in reading and less time for the essay. It should be about an hour for each section. That's how you all should have been prepping so far. The other thing to remember is, this is very important. There is no penalty for guessing. So if you have any questions you've left blank in the multiple choice that you intended to go back to, right? If you intended to go back to, then what you should do is make sure that you guess something. It doesn't matter whether you guessed A, B, C, D, or E, but you should put down an answer because there's no penalty for guessing. You cannot add more lines on page 18. Those are the lines that are given to you. Okay. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I'm gonna let Francis take the reign here. The last thing I want to tell you all is you should be extremely proud of yourselves for working so hard for the last few weeks, for the last few months. For some of you, this has been over a year now that you all have been preparing for this test. And so trust your ability, trust what your tutors have been working with you on, trust all of the time that you've put in, and do your absolute best tomorrow. You should be extremely proud of yourselves. And this is a very competitive exam, and at the end of the day, it's an experience, right? And this experience, you will come out of it stronger, knowing more and being more experienced for whatever comes next.
Everyone, let's take a moment to type thank you into the chat box, because Mo, Khan, I really just want to say, like, I'm beyond grateful that you are such a solid, consistent person in my life. And I really want to just say thank you, because this is now, I don't even know, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years. And I, on a moment notice, ask you if you could help last minute. And you just are just an incredible human being. So I want everyone to know that Mo really goes out of his way to make sure, I just want to remind all of you, this is all like unscripted. This is all unrehearsed. Like, this is straight from the heart. Mo is telling you what you need to do, how you need to prep. I think Mo really deserves a gigantic thank you. And I'm going to take screenshots of the thank you, because you really, look where we are. We're the day before the test. It's the 11th hour. And I think we want to just give you a very sincere, heartfelt thank you. You have taught at Kweller Prep in Queens. You've taught at Kweller Prep in Manhattan. Now you're doing this remotely via Zoom. You work during Ramadan. You work during holidays. You're just an incredible human being. And there's so many students you don't even know who benefit from your wisdom. Thank you. You're really just amazing. You're really, really just amazing. I also want to remind all of you that tomorrow, just do the best that you can. There are other opportunities. This exam is kind of like a door opener, because what happens is you're prepping for Hunter. It'll help you get ready for specialized high schools. It'll help you get ready for PSAT and SAT and all sorts of other exams as you get older. So this is just the level 1, okay? Do the best that you can. Try as hard as you can and make it as far as you can. And Mo, if you could just kind of take a moment just to add that, they will have other opportunities, right? There are other opportunities besides Hunter. Mo, if you could just quickly just remind them of that, because I think they're a little nervous knowing that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, Hunter was a great experience for me, but just right after Hunter, there was the SHSAT, there's the ISCE. I'm 28 years old right now, and I'm constantly learning. Testing never really does end. I've taken so many tests throughout my life, and the Hunter test was the first big one for me. And so for you, all of you, it's kind of like you guys are all starting that same journey, but now you guys are just at the very beginning, whereas I'm kind of on the back end of it, right? So just remember that every single time, at the end of the day, the best and the most that anyone can expect of you is that you've tried your genuine, sincere hardest on it. And if you've done that, you've done more than enough. And you don't need to feel, of course, in the moment, it might not, if you don't get the result that you're hoping for, it might feel bad. But that's okay, because there's going to be something else right down there, further down the road. So this is all about just getting those experiences down, right? So just make sure that tomorrow when you take that test, you take in all the experience from these last few weeks, these last few months, and you apply it. And then out of that test, whatever you've learned, make sure that you now have that in your toolbox and you can apply it for whatever's further down the road from that. Thank you for all of you as well for taking the time 5 to 6 right before the day of the test. You all should definitely stop studying by 8 to definitely be in bed by like 9 or 10 to make sure you get a solid good number of hours of sleep so that you're well rested. I know it'll be hard. You'll feel restless. The test is tomorrow, but try your best to get some good rest.
And we've already discussed this with the soft music, and Mo can elaborate. Mo, what do you recommend just in terms of super calm down tonight if they have trouble sleeping?
Oh, for me, what's always worked is putting pillows up so that your legs are elevated, your heartbeat's lowered because your heart is actually lower than your legs. And it just, I don't know, don't have your phone with you. Just kind of just like, if you want to play some very soft music, nothing with lyrics, kind of like elevator music, like in the background, and just let your mind kind of go blank. Try your best to let your mind go blank, and there you go. That'll probably be the best way to fall asleep, right? Don't have your phone on you. That's the number one thing I can think about, because I'm sure everyone else who has their phone on them will be either messaging you or talking about the test tomorrow. Are you nervous and whatnot? And that's not really helpful. So let's try to keep the phones away while you're trying to fall asleep late at night. I think that's pretty important.
And just keep in mind also positive energy. So really use the rest of these remaining hours to remain very positive. Okay. Keep that in mind too. So that you have it. And I want to end in a, really everyone's saying thank you to Mo. Who wants to see your cute little doggy? Who wants to see Goldie? Anybody who wants to see our cute little Goldie doggy? All right, go ahead, guys. Okay, so keep that in mind with the chat. We're just very proud of you. You guys are really, really doing a lot of hard work, and you're very young. This is hard, especially during a pandemic. This is hard. Okay, Kayla, I'm answering your question because you wrote it 15 times. You do not get your Hunter essay back. You actually don't get it. There is a little way to get it. You can file a FOIL, but you guys are too young to file a FOIL. Whatever parents are listening, but there's really no way to get your Hunter essay back. So the answer is no. Besides legally, but that's kind of the only way I know of. So relax, guys. All right. The answer is no, you don't get it. Who wants to see a really cute little doggy? Can you write below the lines? No, stay within the lines. If you write big, try to write smaller. If you write small, try to write bigger. Who wants to see a cute little doggy? Are you ready? Guys, can we shift gears? Let's go see the doggy. Ready? Goldie. Hold on, Mo, can you spotlight me?
Of course.
Wait, Mo, I need to get rid of this like blur thing. Hold on 1 second, everyone. This is very important. Hold on. I have spotlight, and then I just need to figure out how to remove my blur. Hold on, guys, bear with me because my tech savviness is only so good. Background, none. There we go. Who's looking to Goldie? Who wants? Okay, ready? What's cuter, Goldie or the baby? I have a baby and I have a Goldie. Are you ready? Hi. Okay. Who wants to see the Goldie? Who wants to see the baby? You want to see the baby? Jacob, say hi. Jacob, say hi. Hi. You know what he wants? He wants to see Goldie. Are you ready? Look here, guys. Do you guys? Oh, do you love these moments? Do you know that I knew Mo Khan when I had 0 babies? Now I have 3. Do you believe it, Mo? Every time I used to guilt Mo keep working, I said, Mo, you can't leave Kweller Prep. I'm having a baby. You can't leave the business. Good. Are we good? Yes. Is that fun? Look at how relaxing that is, guys. Why don't you watch little cute puppy movies, or little Instagram has cute little puppy clips. Good. Hi, Jacob. Say bye-bye. Jacob, you want to give me a kiss in the hand? Give me a kiss. Kiss. Nope. He doesn't want to do anything right now. He just wants to hang out. Say bye, Goldie. Goldie, wish everyone good luck. Goldie, wish them good luck.
Goldie doesn't talk, Mo. Sorry, it's all you. Everybody, let's do something else really.
Okay.
Are you ready? We are gonna go off mute and we're gonna say thank you to Mo Khan. Are you ready, guys? Are you excited about this moment? We're gonna count to 3 and we're gonna say thank you to Mo Khan and tell him he's the bestest. 1, 2. Thank you, Mo.
Thank you, Mocha.
Thank you,
You're
Mocha.
the best.
So much, Mocha.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mocha.
Mocha.
Oh, you're the
Thank you. Condo Dingo here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Mo Khan, Jacob, thank you. Say thank you, Mo Khan. No, look. Bye-bye. Oh my God, dog abuse. Goldie, what are you doing? So fun.
Thank you.
You realize the dog's in a stroller, right? Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Jacob's like, don't take away my dog. Jacob, say bye.
Bye, Jacob.
Cute, Mo. Mo, when you tutor my kid, you're gonna give me a discount. You better not charge me full price. You better not charge me full price. No, we took away the dog. Sorry, you guys. Goldie couldn't stay with him. He's so upset we took away the dog. Are you ready? Mo, you have 12,000 thank yous, and I'm gonna take a screenshot of it before we end the Zoom. Hold on. The baby is cuter than the dog. Aw, thank you, Jenna. The baby is cuter than the dog. What do you think? I don't know. That's a tough one, right? Isn't that a tough one? He's so upset we took the dog away. Hold on. I'm taking a photo. You know what I did today, Mo?
What happened?
Today I transferred the GoFundMe.
Oh, wow.
It was for Kweller. I'll send it to you. Today I'm taking like 5 screenshots. Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, Mo, I have all the images. Thank you, Mo. I'm very grateful as always. Okay.
Of course.
Oh,
That's
I'll
one.
I'm actually on a separate note, very proud to tell all of you that Kweller Prep participated in a fundraiser, and I don't know, I'm just very proud of it. We raised money for a family. I'm very, very proud of it. All right. Thank you so much, Mo. The recording, Mo, I'm gonna wait for you to send it to me because people are begging for this recording. I'm sorry I missed it, but it seems
Okay.
good. You have like, people asking for the recording. Okay. Oh my God, everyone, I see your messages. You think I don't get your alerts? I'm getting them. Mo, if you could send me the recording, I will.
I sent the PDF
post
off, and the recording should automatically go to Ben as soon as I end it.
When you end it, you're gonna get an email. Can you forward me the email and forward it to Ben right away because
Sure thing.
they like are dying for your recording. Okay. Mo, do you see that? You have like 10 people asking for this recording right now. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You guys are the best. Zane, I saw all of your messages. I just want you to know I'm not ignoring it. All right. I'm very proud. I'm going back. All right. Bye, everyone. Queller's finally leaving. I'm leaving. Say bye, baby. Look. Shoopy shoop. Shoopy shoop. Jacob. That's it, Mo. I tried. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye,
Bye,
everyone.
bye.
Good luck.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.